Welcome, everybody. I'm James from eDirectory. This is Emerson and Gabriel as well from our marketing department. Good afternoon, everyone, and we're looking forward to today's webinar. I guess we'll just get this started here. For some logistics before we start, if anybody has any questions during the webinar, you can just pop them into the chat and we will stop periodically to answer questions as they come in, as well as at the end of the webinar, we'll have a longer period to answer questions about both this topic and anything else you want to ask. Okay, so today we're going to talk about data acquisition, how to populate your online directory. This is a very important topic, and hopefully we can give you some tips to get off on the right track. So the first thing is, why is this so important? We just had a question come in about a recording. Yes, we do have a recording available. We will post it to the blog. Usually it posts within 24 hours of the webinar finished up. Sorry, I should have mentioned that. So back to this topic. Why is this so important about data? It's really the core of your user experience. We have a lot of people that when they start an online site, a directory, they get too focused, too stuck on the code and the style and all of that. But really what's so important about your directory and your user experience is what they're trying to look for, which is your data. So this is really one of the most important things that you can possibly spend your time on, is really getting the great data together. Quality content is just so important today. You know, there's billions and billions of pages of everything you can imagine out there on the internet. It's really about the quality that you're putting together. And Google is very, very smart. They have basically a monopoly in search. People looking for things go to Google, and they're getting very smart about how they decide which pages they send the traffic to. And they're really good about finding the quality traffic, and you know, when you do a search term, sending people to that. So quality content, it attracts you know, just like bees to the nectar here for your site. And it is the key asset you're building. So think of it as like a piggy bank. Every time you're putting data together, you're building value in your business, in your site, whatever type of data it is. So quality is key. And why does somebody want to come to your site instead of all the other options on the internet? That's the real thing that you need to think of at the end of the day. When you're saying, hey, am I ready to go live? Do you have enough data there where your site looks great, where people would actually want to use it, where it is a real resource and it's not just some other site out there? So how do we do that? There's four things that make up quality in terms of the data. One of them is breadth of the data. Do you have all of the listings available for that subject matter? And the topic that we, you know, just sort of the sample topic that we often use in our webinars is this idea of like piano lessons. Say you're doing a directory on piano lessons, helping people find piano teachers and that sort of thing. So when we talk about, do you have all the listings available? Do you have every single piano teacher that exists in your market? And so the world is a very, very big place. You probably don't want to do help people search for piano lessons in Asia if you're not from Asia and you don't really know that market very well. So really think about, first, what is your market? You know, how big are you going to go? And then how many listings are in there? So you know, you may go nationwide in the United States or nationwide in England or in Europe or wherever you're located. Or if that is still really big for you know, the size of your resources at your business, you may narrow it down and you may start with, okay, instead of doing piano lessons nationwide, we're going to do piano lessons on the East Coast or in New York State or in New York City or in Manhattan, manhattanpianoteachers.com or something like that. So you can narrow it down to make sure that you understand how much data you have, how much data is out there, and that the area you're going after, you can have enough breadth to cover everything. The second factor in quality is depth. Do you have all of the information about each listing? And so think about it. Piano lessons. Okay, you have a piano teacher. What is their background? Do you have photos and videos of how they operate? Do you have some statement about their methodology? Do you have their pricing for the lessons? Do they do group lessons, individual lessons? Do they come to you or do you go to them? What kind of piano do they have at their piano place where they do their lessons? Et cetera, et cetera. What kind of education do they have? Whatever you can possibly think of. How many students do they have? How long have they been in business? You can think about all this possible information that somebody might be interested in. And then that is the depth of the individual listing. And so with eDirectory, you can customize fields and add fields to the listings, et cetera, to make sure that you have the depth covered. So breadth and depth are two big pieces of quality. The next thing is the data error-free. And so if you're building a directory in scale, often there's going to be some other people inputting data. The business owners themselves, eDirectory has a feature where people can create a listing themselves and take control of it, claim a listing, and then they're going to update their own data. In addition to that, you may buy a data list and import it. So is this data that you're putting in your directory, is it good quality? Is it error-free? In the US, there's some statistic, I'm not even sure the source of this, but every business moves on average every 5 to 7 years. So if you think about that, a business moves addresses 5 to 7 years, probably that data, 20% of your data is going to go stale every year. And so there needs to be some work into not just, creating the data, but also maintaining it after it's in there. So that's the third thing, is it error-free? And then the fourth thing to quality is having, data that nobody else has. So you can find everything's out there in Google or somewhere, but do you have it? Do you have the things that nobody else has? Do you have more information about these piano lessons? Do you have ratings and reviews, all this other type of information? Often this level of quality makes, is it hard to find data? Is it tedious to put together? One other big thing is the data curated? So you can do a Google search on anything and it'll pull up information, but really there's so much out there that's distracting for the user. And so the value that you're providing with your directory is actually curating the data, which means removing the stuff that isn't relevant, and really filtering it and making sure that it is good data that your visitors want. So that's the fourth thing in terms of putting together quality. And if you do all this right, this is the real gold, and this is really where the value is in the business, in the site that you're building. It's in this data. So as you get started, there are a couple different phases here to building out your data strategy, your data. And the first one is, it's always a good idea to set some goals up front in terms of these elements, like what kind of breadth are you going to go for, what kind of depth are you going to go for. Then after that, you do the initial build of the data. And then after you've got the initial data built out, there'll just be ongoing maintenance, updating listings, etc. So for goals, there's two pieces to it: depth goal and the breadth goal. The depth goal is a little bit easier, and what I recommend is that you think about your topic, whatever it is, piano lessons, it can be anything. We have a lot of B2B customers that do industrial sectors and stuff like that. Think about what fields do you want in the listing. And what I recommend is that you just do a brainstorm on it. What would I be interested in if I was trying to make a purchase decision in this area? What info is out there? What info can I possibly have? What info does nobody else have that people are curious about? Those type of things. And then just brainstorm it and then set up your listing, configure your listing first. And that's done in eDirectory. It's done in the site manager. You just go in, add the fields that you need, and then you'll have your data structure. Your depth goal is set. I want to get all of this data for every listing, and photos, videos, etc. The next thing is the breadth goal. How many listings are available? And so with this, what you want to do is first try to make an estimate of how many listings are out there. And so often I ask people, often, if I talk to new customers, I often ask them, if they're in some area that I don't know very well, or even if I do know the area a little bit, the category a little bit, I'd say, well, how many piano teachers are there out there? And then, often people are like, well, not really sure. And so there are a bunch of ways to sort of set this goal. If you're in some field that is regulated, like say you're doing something medical, doctors, for instance, I'm quite sure, every doctor needs to have a registration. And I'm quite sure there's some government office that can tell you exactly how many doctors there are in the United States or in England or whatever market you're in. So many regulated fields, you'll be able to find that info. There's, 600,000 doctors in the United States or something along those lines. If it isn't a regulated field and you're not really sure, one other thing that you can do is just do sort of a sampling technique, where you make an estimate based on, whatever population size, et cetera. So maybe what you do is, say you pick a small city that has, 30,000 inhabitants, and then you just do really hard Google searches on piano teachers in that market, and then you can make an estimate. Oh, in a 30,000 person city, there are 200 piano teachers, and then you can interpolate or extrapolate to make an estimate based on the entire market. So if in a city of 30,000 there are this many, then in a city of or in a country of 300 million there are this many total. And then you can really realize, okay, how many listings are out there? I got it. And then what you can do also is decide what kind of resources do you have? Do you have a big team of people that can go out and build this data out? Do you have a budget to invest in it? Are you going to do it all yourself? What are you going to do? And then from there, you can decide, well, United States may be too big to get started. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start on New York. I'm going to start in Manhattan to do that. So pick your markets. Also, we'll talk in a minute about data vendors, and data vendors can help set your goals as well. And they also have some of the data vendors may have some depth to them, and so they can help set your depth goal. One business case that I always like to mention is this case of Craigslist, which it isn't. Some parts of the world may not use it, but in the United States, it's very, very well known, and it is a very famous business. I've heard their revenues today are approaching or over $1 billion. It's a private company, so nobody really knows, and they don't update their design, so the site looks pretty antiquated. But they're a pretty sophisticated business, actually. And they were very, very smart about how they got off the ground. Essentially, Craigslist destroyed the newspaper classified industry entirely. It used to be everybody would go and pay a local newspaper to post an ad there. Then Craigslist came along and offered listings for free in some categories and paid in some categories. And the community started using that instead of local newspapers, and local newspapers often make about 30% of their revenue from classified. So it's a huge it was a huge impact. And the way Craigslist was able to do this and become nationwide, I think now they're in something like 70 countries. The way they were able to do this expansion was they were very, very smart about their goals in terms of their depth and breadth. So they picked, when they started, they were only doing a couple categories. I think they had originally like events and then apartments and jobs, those kind of things. And that was it. And then over time, they started to add more categories. And then they expanded after that into different markets. So, the first market was San Francisco. And then after that, they opened up in New York, and then market after market. But they didn't try to do everything all at once. They didn't try to go every category, every market initially, just because it's too much. And preparing and getting all that data together is really a lot of work and tough to do. So they're very, very smart about it. So pick your goals very carefully. And then with your goals, the other thing is to set a timeline. How many listings are you going to build out a week or a month? Getting all this organized, setting all that up is important. If you don't have a timeline, you don't have goals, you're probably not going to execute quite as well as you could if you did. So the initial build, one thing I just want to mention is it doesn't happen by itself. We have a add your own listing feature. People can go in and just create their own listings, set up an empty site and expect people to invest the time that it takes to add a listing. They're not going to do it. Doesn't matter how many ads you run. That doesn't work. You need to get the thing running initially, and then after the site is running, people start adding their listings. So keep that in mind. You need to put the work in up front. One other thing about data is it's really important that you think about SEO, especially when you're building out the categories. For instance, there's very, very different traffic on car versus automobile. And so think about that when you're setting up the categories. Many of the lists that you'll buy use categories that are like SIC, SIC code, like standard industry classification. And those categories were put together by the tax office, not what people are really looking for when they're doing Google searches. So don't just assume and take the category from the list that you buy. Go in there and edit it as you see necessary. And it's a good idea to make those edits in a spreadsheet before you do the initial import if you're importing data. And sometimes the other note on this is that sometimes you do want to focus on the less competitive category, just because then there's a higher chance you can get to the top of Google. And sometimes, your strategy is, hey, listen, I'm going to go after automobile, but I'm going to be up top, and then you're able to go make a good sales pitch on being on first page for X, Y, and Z. So think about your strategy there, and the SEO. We have some other webinars on SEO, but it is important. So after you either acquire or build your initial list, import it. Then basically the sequence is you want to improve the list. And this will happen constantly, but you want to go in, add photos, add video, add detailed descriptions, et cetera to it, products that they offer, everything you can think of to that. And then as you're getting going, as the directory is coming together, then what you can do is send out emails to people, reach out to people to say, hey, claim this listing. Hey, you're part of our directory. We want you to own your listing and see what people are saying about you. And you reach out to them. And we have some resources on eDirectory.com, some email templates, et cetera, that you can that you can get and download and customize for your own needs and your own category. So list acquisition. How do you get the list? There's a couple ways to do it. Manually searching and building works really well, actually, and I recommend people, even if you're doing some enormous category that has millions of listings, it's still a good idea to search and build out a bit of it yourself so that you really understand what's out there, where it is, who the competitors are. You'll get a sense of all that as you're trying to do that. You can do that typically with the Google searches and building. There's scraping tools out there. Gabriel will mention one here in a minute. You need to be careful about copyright law. We're not lawyers, so we can't give any legal advice at all. And obviously, whatever jurisdiction, eDirectory is used all over the world. So whatever jurisdiction might have different copyright laws. Generally in the US, I think it's like public information can't be copyrighted. These are things like business name, address, phone number. That's kind of public info, but things like descriptions and photos, those potentially are copyrighted. But you can get a tool out there that basically goes to websites, scrapes it, puts it into an Excel sheet that you can easily import. One other way you can do it is to make a partnership with an organization. There's probably some association of piano teachers in New York City or in the United States or wherever, and they are probably interested in helping their members promote their services. And so if you approach them smartly, you may be able to set up a partnership where they release the list and you give them some added value, et cetera. You need to be careful not to come off as spamming people. Nobody likes spam. So think about how you're approaching and doing all that. But there's many organizations that have very well curated lists of that. One other way that many of our customers do is getting a list from a list broker. There's a lot of places you can buy data. There's a company used to be called Info USA. Now it's called Data Axle USA. It's good quality, somewhat expensive. I think the listings of many of them have been phone verified. Also, they will tell you how many listings are available by zip code and city and category, those kind of things. Axiom, giant, billion-dollar data vendor in the U.S. Dun and Bradstreet, Hoover's, CityGrid, Yelp, Oddity Software. The Oddity stuff is very, very low quality, terrible data, to be honest with you, from what we've seen. But if you just need something to fill it in and look like your directory is full, maybe it'll work for you. Data Supplier. There's a bunch of other ones. This list, you may go out there and do Google before you buy anything, see what's out there. For that, often they sell it based on category or how many listings are available or something along those lines for it. And the prices are all over the place. These really cheap ones might sell you nationwide for $100 or something, but the data is so terrible. Whereas the really good quality list might cost you 50 cents a listing or something. It really depends. It's all over the place, depending on the category and how many are available and that type of thing. Then after you have your data, what you want to do then is manually do enough work in every category so that the site looks good, so that it's a good user experience for your visitor. So a visitor coming in, they're looking for a piano teacher in Philadelphia. If you're in the Philadelphia market, make sure that category has enough listings in it with photos and descriptions and all of that, so that it looks good. Recommend you do a couple listings yourself at least, but then you can obviously outsource it to do it in scale. There's a whole bunch of ways to outsource it. One of the ways is just get a freelancer and have them crank through listings. You can have people work from home, etc. You can pay them by listing, however you want to do it. Works pretty well. You get students to do that or people in the industry. You can hire outsourcing companies. You can Google that as well. And there's a bunch of companies located all over the world that do data cleanup and that type of thing as well. And you can hire a group to go and work on your database in that manner. One other way to do it is as part of the sales process. And so we find this works pretty good. Where you need to initially get enough in there, but then as people are selling listings or reaching out to listing owners, they build out the listing and then reach out and say, hey, do you want to claim your listing? That type of thing. Hey, I need a little bit more information. I'm wondering what products and services you offer. And that gives you an intro. Hey, we're featuring on our site. We want to know a little bit more, what hours you open, that kind of thing. Works pretty well to build out the listings. And then one other tool that's out there, there's some crowdsourcing tools. There's one called Mechanical Turk, which is a service actually from Amazon.com. It is pretty interesting, actually. It's a crowdsourced service where you upload, a job for people to bid on, and you can get a crowd of people working on it, and you can pay per whatever, pay 50 cents or whatever, a listing, that kind of thing, to do X, Y, and Z. Hey, I'll pay 5 cents to get zip code for each of these businesses or something. And then people go in and do them all like that. It's a pretty interesting service. You have to invest a little bit of your time in understanding how it works and how it's priced and testing out, how to explain your job and do all the bidding and stuff like that. But if you do need massive scale, the service works for that. So check it out. It's pretty interesting either way. One other question we have is about Yelp integration. So Yelp, is a nationwide. It's mostly like restaurants and stuff, but they do have other categories as well, where it's a guide. And so they have a plugin. They have an API basically where you can your site can fill in data with Yelp data basically for stuff that you don't have. And we have a plugin. There's a one-time cost to this plugin. The way that the Yelp plugin basically works is it'll fill in the bottom of a search result with data from that search result. So like say restaurants or piano lessons in New York City, it'll put up your listings, and then below that it'll put in Yelp listings for, do a search against Yelp's database and then put it up. The problem with it is it needs Yelp's terms of service. It's free. Yelp's terms of service are free. The plugin has a one-time cost, but it's free to use. However, it'll drive traffic to Yelp, and it needs to have Yelp's branding on it. And so at the end of the day, and you can't do much with the data, it's like you just display it with that according to Yelp's terms of service. So I actually don't recommend this. I know we're selling a plugin for it. We do that because people sometimes need it, but don't recommend using Yelp data just because it'll drive your traffic to Yelp and put Yelp's brand in front of your own. And so people at the end of the day are like, well, why am I using your site instead of going direct to Yelp for that? And your site should curate a lot better than Yelp as well on a lot of these topics. But that is there. I wanted to mention that as well. And so next we'll do some demonstrations. So after you get all your lists and everything, basically the process is you import it into eDirectory, and the eDirectory site manager. There is a very simple import tool, and basically the way that it works is you log into the site manager. Under the listings area, there's an import, and then there's a spreadsheet format, and you just go in, select the column order, and then hit import, and it'll create the listings in there with it. And then you can go in later and build out the additional fields and the photos and the video and all that sort of stuff with it. So that's kind of how you get your data. I don't know if anybody has any questions at this point. Feel free to pop them into the chat. Just drop them, type them into the chat, and we'll stop and we'll answer them. Also, I'm going to turn it over to Gabriel now to talk a little bit about a scraping tool, which is kind of interesting. So I'll turn it over to him while people are posting any questions in.
No, sure. Hello, everybody. My name is Gabriel. I think we have some questions here in the chat. Brandy says, I'm using Octopars currently. Any other scrapers you recommend? Actually, we just tested Octopars as well, so it's the only one I know that works. There are others. I guess there are others that are paid as well, but I don't have any experience with that yet.
Mark just posted in there about BotSoul has a number of excellent crawlers. That may be a place to check. One thing I did want to jump in and mention here for Brandy and everybody else regarding Octopars. Facebook just filed a lawsuit. I think that came out like last week against Octopars. And basically, apparently, Octopars is a Chinese-based company, and they were taking people's logins to Facebook and then scraping other data and storing that data somewhere. So check the press on it. Obviously, Facebook doesn't like Octopars, and I don't know what the reality is of the lawsuit or anything like that. We obviously can't give anybody any advice, but check that out to Geb. So Gabriel, back to you.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, just like James mentioned, so this is the Octopars login screen. After you log in, actually, you're gonna see this screen. So again, this is a tool that you can scrape data from the internet. It could be from Amazon, eBay, any kind of website that has like a database on it. You could scrape. For that problem that the lawsuit that Facebook's putting on Octopars, we don't recommend at all that you go and scrape like protected data, user data, like from Twitter, like Instagram or Facebook or any social network. It's not recommended, okay? So let's say I have a link, a URL from Yelp here that is sushi restaurants in Austin, Texas. I just went to Yelp and copy and pasted this URL here. So once you hit start, Octopars is going to start scraping that page that you just pasted there. I have it loaded right here. So you see from that URL, it will start to show me the exact. This is just like Yelp looks like in real life, with all the names and pictures and the features of the listing, the description, if it has like delivery or takeout, everything. Octopars will then gather all this information that you want, and once you start downloading it, it will transform it into an Excel file, so it's readable inside a directory. So you can easily upload the Excel file to your directory directory. It contains all the things that Yelp would provide, such as the title, the title URL, the image link, and stuff like that, and like what type of cuisine is that, and the descriptions and stuff. So you can easily script this data and upload to your own directory. Okay, just be mindful with the copyrights, as James mentioned, and also don't forget to read about the privacy policies in Octopars before you start doing anything with it. Okay, so it's a pretty simple tool. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So you have to try multiple times to until you refine what you want to scrape from all the websites you want. So again, you can pretty much get data from anything, from anywhere, like from an AliExpress or Amazon, or if you have a selling product sites or anything like that, Yellow Pages. So yeah, that's the tool basically. We also have a blog post that I will share with you guys about getting listings, getting more data from your website. I would just post it in our chat section right here. Okay.
Okay.
Oh
great.
yeah. I will make a bigger presentation of this. It's just to overview the tool itself.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great, Gabriel. And there are a number of other tools out there as well. We had a couple comments come in while you were speaking there. Angela said she tried to import and would not let me because every field was not populated. Is there a simpler import template I should use to just get some data plugged in for my initial build? A couple of the fields are required, but I think most of them are not required, Angela. So what I'd recommend is that the file, the import that you were having trouble with, that they were complaining about, is maybe send that to our support team. Say, hey, I was trying to import this and it wouldn't allow me to. Because I think if you have listing title and a couple other fields, that's all that's required. Many of the other fields are not, although the template has more of them in there. You should just be able to leave them blank for that. But reach out to our support team and they can help you get through what you need there. I think is probably the best solution. Mike posted in a question, what is the maximum number of listings a directory can handle at this time? So Mike, it actually depends on a number of factors in terms of like, if you can have a very large database, but how much traffic are you going to have hitting that database? Is the traffic hitting individual listings, or are they doing searches? Are the searches on a certain sector, or are they pretty broad against the whole directory? But as a general guideline, eDirectory can handle millions of listings. You may need some special hosting if you're going to have high traffic environments. So please reach out to us if you do have a high traffic with a large database, and we can give you some guidelines that depend. Most of our customers often have, under 100,000. If you have under 100,000 listings with, some normal amount of traffic, I don't think you have to worry about it. eDirectory should be able to handle that pretty smoothly. But it really depends on the profile. So if you have specific questions on that, if you're doing hundreds and hundreds of thousands or millions of listings with a high traffic environment, reach out to us. There is additional cost to set up things like load balancing, auto scaling, redundant databases, all that type of stuff. But we have done it before, and we can help you as needed on that. But usually in this day and age, it isn't such an issue. I remember years ago, when database, everything hardware and everything was more expensive, and it used to have to pay more attention to it. But today it's a little bit easier to host most normal sized databases. Question from Barry. I exported listing category information and made changes to the file. However, I could not see a way to upload and import the corrected listing category info. No, Barry, the categories, if you export that, you're not able to just re-import that and it doesn't update that. If you're changing category names and that type of thing, it's a good idea that you need to log into the site manager and edit the category in the web interface, and then it'll save it and update all of the linked listings to it. You can update listing data. If you export your spreadsheet and update the address and the title of the listing and all that, it'll use the listings ID in that spreadsheet, and then it'll update instead of adding a new row to the database. So for listing data, yes. For category information, you need to update that through the site manager web interface. Can you bulk upload listing images? Brandy, we don't have an automated way to do bulk listing image upload. And the reason for that is there are a whole bunch of different factors that need to happen on the back end regarding images. These are things like, do the images need to be cropped? Is there metadata with the image? A thumbnail needs to be created. There's a couple versions of the image that are created depending on device size. So the image stuff on the background is a little bit more complicated. That's why we don't have a bulk upload out of the box. However, we have done upload scripts before, and so we can pretty affordably help you get your image upload in there, through an automated fashion. But reach out to an account rep, whoever handles your directory, whether that's one of our setup people or Daniel Storm or Darvin, and they can help you get what you need depending on that. It's not a big job typically to upload images, but it's something like, sometimes we have people with these huge databases, and then the image is located on some URL link, and then on the background the server needs to go download that, resize it, make 3 copies of it, put some metadata in on top. So it's often a little bit of a more involved process, and that's why it's not part of the simple upload. Is the data, okay, question from Scott, is the data ready from Octopars to eDirectory, or does it need to be cleaned up? I'd always recommend cleaning it up, and always also running a test before uploading a huge spreadsheet. Upload 3 rows, just make sure you know what you're getting before you upload 30,000. However, the eDirectory import tool, it has a way for you to select the categories, and so you can say, oh, column one is this field, and column 2 is this field, and then you can just kind of go next through it. So it's pretty smooth to get things to go up. And as far as a nationwide US national directory, I would recommend reducing file size. If you're uploading very large databases, there's some limit, I'm not sure what it is offhand, to the actual upload tool where you can upload a sheet of X. If you need a larger limit, you can reach out to our support team as well. But just, there's a bunch of processing that happens when data is uploaded. It needs to create a bunch of cache files, and it needs to update the search index. Sometimes cities are added or categories are added. There's a whole bunch of things that happen on the back end for it. And so there's a limit on the number that can be uploaded at one time. So I'd recommend breaking that down into cities and doing that file by file. Also, if you're going nationwide, I don't know that you're going to be able to scrape all that, because I think in the US there's something like 17 million listings. And so that's probably something where you're going to want to buy a database for that to get started, unless you're doing certain categories or certain states, then certainly. All right, Gabriel posted a link to the blog update that gives some more details. I had a question from William. How hard is it to do bulk category editing after upload? Example, I want to change categories after they're imported. Yeah, that's probably, so basically you can edit category names and delete them and stuff like that, but we don't, there isn't a tool to like select bulk listings and move them around in different categories. So it's probably better if you can to get that set up front. Otherwise, what you're going to probably have to do is like export the list, and then you can add new category names in there, and then re-import the lists, and then delete the old unused categories after that from the web interface to do that regarding categories. But you'll see, you'll get in there, the interface, I think it's pretty straightforward in terms of doing all that. Can you recommend a service for best quality medical and health databases? I believe in the US, the government has a database somewhere that you can get of all of the doctors. I don't know where it is or something, but I think there's some way to get that. I don't know that offhand. Maybe what we'll do, Gabriel and Emerson, why don't we note that and just see if we can follow back up with Scott just on where to get medical health databases. I'm not sure offhand. It's probably some Google searches. Some data vendors are better than others. I don't know offhand the answer to that, but I think there is a US government source. I know many countries have a lot of that info out there and available. Okay, well, great. Do you guys have any more comments, Emerson or Gabriel, or any more questions from the field here?
Yeah, let me
I-
just post some quick links in our personal contacts. If anybody has any further questions after the webinar, we can quickly
okay, great.
answer.
Yep, fantastic. And our support team is always here. You can reach out to them. They're on live chat at eDirectory.com, as well as account management team as well. We're certainly happy to help you get started, help you get off the ground. Also, our setup service, we have a setup service where we help import a database if you already have one. The setup service also includes building out 20 listings as well. If you want to look at the setup service where we take care of it for you, that's available as well. And yeah, so good luck building your data. Remember, quality is key for all of this data. You really want to have the best site on the internet, the best source. Somebody looking for something, you need to have the best answer there for that. So think about that with whatever you're doing. Okay, if no more questions, I want to thank everybody for coming today. We will have a new webinar in about 2 weeks. Do we know what the next webinar is yet, Emerson?
Yes, we have the next two scheduled already.
Okay.
It's on our page.
Great.
The link for the webinars are posted on the chat. Next topic will be listen templates for accuracy of content. So it's kind of related to the today's topic.
Yeah.
It's very important. When you mentioned at the beginning to create unique content, pieces of content that only your website has, I remembered about this topic. So glad that you mentioned.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next webinar in about 2 weeks will be about building out your detailed listing page and customizing all the fields there and putting the widgets on, that type of thing for it. So should be good. So come back and join us in a couple weeks. Okay, well, thanks a lot, everybody, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.